Hello and welcome to today's video lecture on Chapter 11. Today we'll be talking about information systems management. And so some things that I hope that you get out of this chapter are that you'll have an understanding of the functions and organization of the IS department. So we're going to take a look at what it means to have an IS department. We're going to look at how do you manage that department, how do you manage the IT resources, and hopefully from there you'll take away how important and critical an IS department is to the success of an organization. I always like to say, think about if you took all the computers out of a business today, would they be able to survive? Because a lot of the work that used to be done by people is now being done by one computer. So you'd probably have to hire a bunch of people and pay them a certain amount, and that may eat into all your profits, and you may not even be profitable anymore. Anyhow, moving on to this question 2 to get out of this chapter is, how do organizations plan to use their IS? Is it more or less as a utility, or is it from a strategic perspective? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of outsourcing that IS department? What we mean by outsourcing is you could actually have some other company run your IT. And so it might be in the cloud, or they might even bring in their own people and equipment and run it right there in your own facilities. And then lastly, we'll look at what are your user rights and responsibilities. So let's go ahead and get started here. So looking at this first slide here, answering question 1, what are the functions and organization of the IS department? One is that use the IS department for the organizational goals and strategies. So it may just be that you want to support people's computers on their desktop. It might also be that you want to support their phones or any other device that they're connecting to the network. So you're going to need somebody to manage your network for you. If you want to use email on an email server, then you're going to need somebody to manage that email server. Then from a strategic perspective is, are you going to use IT to help you get a strategic advantage? That is there something in your company that you're going to do differently than your competitors, and you're going to have IT help you do that? And there are whole books on how you can use strategic IT. But that's one way of thinking about it. Then you might also, in your IS department, you may not be doing too much in-house. You may actually have people, other vendors outside of the company doing things for you, and so somebody then needs to manage those outsourcing relationships. There's also a function that says, how are they going to help you protect your information assets? So that's protecting your data. A lot of people don't spend a lot of time thinking about that until it's too late. That is, after the data has been compromised and it's been either used by somebody inside the company, or somebody broke into the network and got it electronically, and now they're using it outside of the company. But one of the functions of IS should be is to protect those information assets from becoming a problem to management, so that now the additional resources have to be used in order to clean up the problems that caused. One of the basic things then is to just develop and maintain your computing infrastructure. So that's the computers, laptops, like I said, any kind of device. But then that infrastructure means that network that you're going to use. And so somebody has to do the cabling for that. They have to maintain the router. Are you going to have Wi-Fi? How far is your Wi-Fi going to be reach? Again, you've got to secure those devices as well. So that's part of what the IS will do. And then lastly here, if you've got any applications, any other kind of servers, database servers, email servers, video servers, and so on. They're going to be able to help you develop, operate, and maintain those, and then any applications you might have. And the applications are all the ones you've used throughout your IS courses, and that's, if you're going to use Word, what happens when the patches from Microsoft come out? Who's going to install the patches? And patches are updates that correct errors that have been found, and so they've corrected those. If you run this program, it'll correct those errors, and hopefully the program won't have those problems anymore. But IIS is going to install those and update those. Other applications would be Excel, any kind of database application. It might be Access or SQL Server or Oracle. We might have some ERP systems like PeopleSoft, SAP, and they're going to be able to help maintain those as well. Or you're going to outsource those things, and somebody then has to maintain those relationships. So here's a typical organizational structure. We have a CEO at the top, or a COO, and then who reports to them. And then depending on the type of organization you have and how forward-thinking it is, you should have a CIO, a Chief Information Officer, that reports directly to the CEO. A lot of times in older companies and people that don't think of a strategic use for the IS department and IT, they will put the CIO or that person that's over the IS department under the Chief Financial Officer or under the accounting area. But anyhow, the people that then report to the CIO would be, you have a Chief Technology Officer, somebody's in charge of operations, somebody's in charge of development, any outsourcing relations, and so on. And a very important field within the last probably 10 years or so is this Chief Information Security Officer. So security is becoming more and more of an issue, and we need somebody who's directly involved in looking out for the security and privacy of the organization when it looks at its data. Here are some IS-related job positions. Typically, they're going to require you to have a 4-year degree. You're going to need to have some business knowledge, probably some good communication skills and writing skills. So if you like programming, then you'd probably become a programmer. You're actually going to write the programs. Now, to me, over the past probably 10 or 15 years, I've seen less and less programmers that are writing code from scratch. What they're doing now is buying already pre-written applications, programs, and then if they have to be modified for the company to use, somebody might go in and write the code to change things slightly, but they wouldn't write the entire program. So this is what programmers would be doing today. Then we have a systems analyst. They're going to be more of the person that knows about everything in terms of the IT. So they're going to look at system requirements. They're going to look at procedures for jobs, and then they're going to come up with some different test plans. And so if you go back and look at those 5 components of an information system, they're going to be someone who understands how all of these are going to fit together. So you got your hardware, your software, your data, your people, and your procedures. And so they're going to work with all of those. And then probably a little on the lighter side is going to be your business analyst. And they're going to work with the leaders in the business, and they're going to do some development processes, and they're going to talk to that systems analyst to let them know what the business people need. So you can see in this chart exactly what kind of skills and characteristic requirements are needed for each of these positions. Some other positions you may run into are test engineer, They're going to be able to write test plans and write scripts that can do testing on the system or the network. You'll need somebody that document things, so you're a technical writer. Somebody that's a little more skilled at the hardware, software. You might need a tech support engineer, and also a network administrator for helping you fix problems with your network. And also fine-tune the network. That is, you may have a bunch of packets that are causing information not to be sent to the right computers, and it's awful slow, and so they're going to help you speed up your network and do things that a networking professional would know about in order to make things work optimally. Continuing on with other skills, you might have a consultant, somebody in technical sales, and a project manager, somebody that knows how to manage IT projects. And again, you're going to look at, think about the different skills that these people have to have. So as a manager, if you're starting in a small company and you're deciding you're expanding and you're going to have a dedicated IS department, you're going to need people with these different types of skills. And so this would be a good basis to come back to and think about, what are they going to be doing? What skills do they need? What kind of training should they have? What kind of degree should they come from? And so on. Before there were different types of IT degrees, a lot of people that were in, say, music, because music and math skills kind of interrelate, those people with those kind of skills were very good in the computer area. But now we have dedicated degrees that are in these areas. And so again, you'll be looking for those particular type of skills. Some more advanced skills, more advanced type of positions would be an IT manager, a database administrator, somebody who's going to administer your databases and optimize that so that it's working as efficiently as it can. There are problems with concurrent users and how they access tables, how they access individual fields within the records. And the database administrator is someone who would know how to optimize all that so that everything's working as smoothly as possible. And also help you get information out of your databases so you can make decisions with that. So another person that's going to help you make decisions with that data would be a business intelligence analyst. And so they're going to be able to analyze your data and present the data. They're going to have some knowledge about databases and different types of decision-making skills. Then a little higher up in the organization, you have all these C-type positions. So a chief technology officer, a chief information officer, and a security officer. Again, they're going to be skilled in the specific areas. They're going to have lots of experience, just different things for you to be looking for if you're hiring somebody in your organization, or if you're interested in information systems, and you aspire to one of these C positions, then think about what route do you have to take in order to get there. So if you wanted to be chief information officer, you're going to have really good management skills. You're going to have good knowledge of business and technology and how they can be applied to a business, and be a good communicator. And that can't be stressed enough for any kind of management position you might have. In terms of being a security officer, you're going to have a good background in security and know how that needs to be applied to different types of businesses, and especially the business that you're currently in. I know right now a lot of businesses are moving things to the cloud, and so you're going to have skills in the area of how to secure data that's in the cloud, because more and more businesses are going that way. I'd say even little mom and pop operations are going to have that feature of going to the cloud and using applications in the cloud, yet somebody still needs to understand how to secure that data. On this slide, you can see all the salaries for the different types of information systems positions. Salaries pay quite well in the IS area. You can see that down here, the business analysts around 66. We have something low around 52 here would be your technical sales. And then as you start to get into these other areas, you can see that an analyst is around 65, 66. And then you got your C-type positions that are playing quite well. So the second question is how do organizations plan to use their information systems department? And so one is to align those systems with the organizational strategy. And so if our strategy is to be a forerunner in education using technology, then we're probably always looking at the latest technology that's being used with education. So different types of online technology, whether that's Adobe Connect or using WebEx or using some LMS system like Blackboard or some other type. The IS department may also have someone who then communicates directly with the executive group. You might have these group of executives that really don't know much about IT, but they talk with an IS IT person that helps them understand how the technology could be used in each of their areas. And then lastly here you see that the organization may have a steering committee that kind of oversees how IS is being used throughout the organization. Also, these committees might also select different types of proposals on what to do next, which way they want to go with the limited resources they have for an IT project. So they may help decide which projects get funded and which IT projects might not get funded. The next question we will look at is what are the disadvantages and advantages of outsourcing? So first thing we need to do is probably explain what outsourcing is. So outsourcing is when you hire another organization firm to perform those ITIS services. And so anything that the business does can be outsourced. And the reason why you would outsource is because it's going to save you some money, hopefully. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it. You probably want to do it if you don't have a certain amount of expertise inside your organization. So hopefully then you're going to gain some expertise. So let's say you were installing a SaaS program and you needed someone who understood a particular type of programming language and you just didn't have anybody like that on your staff. Well, you can't just go out and hire somebody with those programming skills and expect to keep them on long term. So chances are what you'll do is you'll outsource that and you'll gain that person's expertise and be able to bring that back into your organization. It also may be that you are doing these things, outsourcing that is, because management just doesn't have the time to be thinking about that internally. So what you're going to do then is outsource that to free up some more time for management to be doing other things that they're better at. So you can think of it as your back room is somebody else's front room. And a lot of times in IT terminology, that's where they say all the computer and infrastructure is part of the back room. So whatever you're outsourcing, that backroom portion, that's what somebody else does for their main business. That becomes their front room. So that's what they're talking about there. So here are some popular reasons for outsourcing your ISIT area. And so we talked about, from a management perspective, you're going to obtain some expertise that you don't currently have. You might avoid some management problems, and so you're going to free up people to be doing other things that they wouldn't have to be doing if they had to be working on it in-house. Hopefully it's going to be cheaper. You're also going to get with that some economies of scale, and some different types of services that you might not be able to get if you were doing it in-house, because people just wouldn't have the time. But along those same lines, you're probably going to get exposed to best practices, because those companies that you're outsourcing to, they're going to use or be doing the best things that's been done in the industry. So you're going to be exposed to best practices, and so maybe if you want to bring that back in-house, you'll at least know or seen how it's best done, and then you can determine how you might want to proceed from there. The other area here is risk reduction, and so maybe it's riskier to do it in-house if you don't have the expertise, if you don't have the time, and so on. And so if you're doing that outsourcing wise, then you're going to reduce your risk overall, especially when you're looking at different types of projects you might want to implement, or different kinds of applications that you want to run, whether that be Exchange server or database server of some type, and so on. In terms of looking at it from risk reduction, then you might have reduces your financial risk. You're going to ensure high quality stuff being done. You're going to avoid substandard quality. Again, that goes back to best practices. Because somebody is doing the best practices, they're probably going to pick the right hardware and software and network protocols and so on for your company that you might not have the expertise to have done. So you're actually moving that risk onto the vendor. Now, having said that, it's very important then that you have somebody that knows about those risks and can manage that contract between you and the vendor now, because if you lock yourself into a long-term contract and then the vendor starts being kind of lazy about the way they do things, they're not very good at being responsive the way you wanted them to be, then you're stuck with that contract. It's long term. And so it'd be hard for you to get out of that without losing a lot of money. And so when you're offloading or outsourcing those functions of IS and IT, you need to have somebody that can manage those contracts between you and those vendors. Some different countries that you may think about outsourcing to would be India. India has been doing outsourcing for a long time. They speak English very well, and so it may be something that you might be interested in. There's other countries like China and Ireland. Again, you need to think about what kind of services are they providing, or will they be communicating with your employees or with your customers somehow? Are they going to do a good job with that? Right? And so all of that can be done using some kind of networking technology, whether that be the telephone or the internet. Some companies, large companies, just work around the clock, and so they move their outsourcing to different countries around the world so that they're always have somebody available to be answering the phone and providing the services that they've outsourced. So here's an example of what are some alternatives to outsourcing. It may be that you just want to use something for a portion of that IS system. So maybe you just want to do something for your hardware, maybe you just want to outsource the software, maybe it's hardware software data, maybe it's hardware software data procedures, and so on. So these are different things that we've talked about. This LAAS is Linux as a service. We've got platform as a service, software as a service, system. And so it just shows you how much can be outsourced these days. And so again, you just need to think and evaluate what would be in the best interest of your organization. So you shouldn't just think of outsourcing as being a great thing. There are also some risks associated with it, and I mentioned some of those risks, that if you enter into a long-term contract and the vendor turns out to be bad and not providing you the services you thought you were going to get, then you're stuck, or it's going to cost you a lot of money to break that contract. So with that, you have this loss of control. You may also be losing control, strategic control of your resources. Now somebody else knows about what you want to do with those resources. What if they should not have good security, and now your competitors find out about it, or they actually tell your competitor what your strategic goals might be. In addition to those kind of problems, you got problems with, because now they're your IS department. They might have different priorities of what needs to be done first. And they may only do things in a certain way, and you can't get things changed easily or quickly. You may also find that you'll get dependent upon a vendor, and then it'll be hard for you to switch vendors because they'll know how your business runs, and if you want to switch vendors, then it'll be difficult. They've got you locked in to their way of doing things, and so it would be difficult for you to switch. So there would be a high switching cost. That would be also a risk there. And so just, look this over and make sure you kind of have a good understanding of what the risk of outsourcing may be, and if that's really something that the benefits outweigh these risks and costs, that you want to go down that path of outsourcing. So as I was saying, you always want to make sure those benefits outweigh those long-term costs. And here are some other problems that are associated with outsourcing. Maybe your fixed costs will prevent you from getting some economies of scale. You may only rely on one vendor, so you're stuck with that vendor, and if things go badly, it'd be hard to find somebody else. Hard to exit out of that contract again. So one of the last questions here is, what are your rights and responsibilities? And so think about this. If you go to work for a company, what should your expectations be in terms of using their computers, using their IT infrastructure? And so you should have a right to use their computer hardware and programs, and you should be able to do your job proficiently, right? You shouldn't have to be waiting. You should have a reliable network and internet connections. Your computing environment should be secure. Your data should be secure. They should do things to help you not get viruses and worms and other kinds of threats. And so maybe if they're running an Exchange server, they're monitoring your email to make sure there's no viruses attached, or people aren't sending spam emails and things like that. Right? You should be able to contribute to the requirements of a new system. So if it's your job and they're working on a new system, you should be able to be involved in that process. If you're not involved in that process, it just makes it more difficult for them to deliver a system that's going to be usable. And that means there's a high chance that they're wasting their money and time by not involving users in the development of that system. Right? If there's problems, somebody should be able to fix those problems in a reasonable amount of time. So you should have some way of reporting those problems and getting help with that. Right? And then any kind of training to help you do your job. They should provide that. You shouldn't have to be expected to have to go out and get your own training and be up to speed on whatever they're using in their workforce. So see, these are some of the things you should be expecting. So then the flip side of that is, what are your responsibilities toward the IS area? Right? So you should learn basic computer skills, or already have those basic computer skills. You should know different techniques and procedures for using those applications once you've been trained. You should also follow whatever policies they have for their security and whatever policies they have for backup procedures. A lot of companies, because they control your hardware, they can come in and back up your computer automatically for you. Right? You should also protect your password. You shouldn't just leave them lying around. If there's a policy to change them every so often, you should do that. If you're going to use other types of devices in the company, then you should follow their policies on that. You shouldn't come in and make hardware modifications so you can do things that the company doesn't want you to be doing or doesn't allow them to monitor what you're doing. And so you shouldn't try and alter your hardware in that way. Right? Only install programs that the company wants you using. And while this sounds a little draconian, the problem is people come in with these other programs the company doesn't know that you have. Then all of a sudden you're expecting support for that. Or all of a sudden that program you installed caused the network to fail or erased a bunch of data. Then it becomes a huge problem that you're responsible for having caused, and the IS department now has to put more time and resources into fixing that and cleaning it up instead of being able to do the things they were expected to be doing in the first place. The next item that they talk about is apply software patches and fixes. This is usually automated by now, but if you're in a small company, you probably need to keep up with whatever updates are going on and see if you should be installing those or not. Typically, Microsoft will come out with updates either once a week or once a month. A lot of IT folks don't like to install the updates right away. They might wait some time period to see what problems those updates may cause, and then once those known problems have fixes for them, then they'll go ahead and install the updates. So again, you need to be a little bit more tech savvy when you're installing patches and fixes. Right? You may be asked to give some of your time to coming up with requirements and thinking about new systems and features. You probably want to avoid reporting just minor problems that you have with the software. The question is, how do you determine what's minor, trivial problem or not? To you, it might seem like a major problem. To the IS folks, it might seem like very small. So an example might be is you're working on an application and the background color is green and you'd rather it be blue and you think this is a problem. So something like that would be trivial, right? So, and I'm sure, they'll let your boss know if you're calling the help desk or the IS department too often for those kind of problems, and then somebody will let you know. So hopefully you'll have an understanding of what the IS department does and can do, a little bit about outsourcing, a little bit about your responsibilities and what you can expect from the IS department. And that ends this chapter.